This is Binod Shankar and you're listening to the Real Finance Mentor podcast from therealfinancementor.com. The Real Finance Mentor is your go-to resource for insight and inspiration on careers in finance, CFA and more. I would think, why this podcast? Well, my goal is to deliver insight and inspiration for your finance career by making it, one, relatable. This is not theoretical stuff. We zero in on the critical, practical issues. Number two, authentic. No bullshit, no sidestepping. The topics, guests, and questions are all from that perspective. And number three, take a chartered accountant and CFA charter holder, add 17 plus years as a corporate warrior, mix in 10 years of entrepreneurship, throw in a decade of full-time CFA training, add speaking, mentoring, cycling, and mountaineering, and that's me. Welcome to the Real Finance Mentor, or as I call it, RFM. Hi guys, this is Binod Shankar here, the Real Finance Mentor, with the latest episode of the Real Finance Mentor podcast, the podcast that brings you insight and inspiration for your careers. This is the next episode, and I've got a very special guest with me today. Special because he doesn't come from the field of finance or investing or stock markets, unlike the people we have on this show. But nevertheless, he'll bring tremendous insight and inspiration from a very different activity. Let me introduce to you Avilash Bisht. Avilash, I've known him for the last, 6 years, 7 years now. Avilash grew up in a small town of Pauri in North India, which offers an incredible 180-degree view of snow-capped mountains of the Garhwal Himalaya. He then went for his further studies to Delhi, finished his university, and then started mountain guiding. Now, Avilash has been guiding trips in the Himalayas since 1997 and has guided several mountaineers successfully to summits of Mount Satopant, Mount Kun, Kedar Dome, Sudarshan Parvat, Bandar Poonch, Gangotri 1, CCKN, Kanyatse, Zojongo, Chok Kangri, Mentor Kangri, Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, Aconcagua, and many more lesser mountains. These names that I rolled out to you, of course, would be very familiar to experienced hikers and mountaineers and not so familiar to other people probably. He's a highly experienced climbing instructor and has designed and executed numerous outdoor training programs. He's trained in mountain search and rescue, and he's also led a couple of life-saving rescue operations. Avilash is a seasoned river guide, apart from being a mountaineer. He's guided trips on most of the commercial multi-day river runs in India, including the Zanskar, Ganga, Bhagirathi, Alaknanda, Tons, Sutlej, and the Kali. Avilash, of course, had a stint in corporate life before setting up his own shop. He's the co-founder and he runs White Magic Adventures, which is a New Delhi-based firm that specializes in mountain guiding in the Himalayas. Avilash, warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you.
So let me start from something that I saw in your bio and I found very interesting, because you completed your bachelor's in science in 97 from St. Stephen's College in Delhi. I looked at the college, and everyone knows this college, right? It's ranked 8th among colleges in India, and it's ranked 2nd among arts colleges and 3rd among science colleges. It's also notoriously difficult to get into, as it receives around 30,000 applicants for about 400 seats every year. The incredibly low admission rate of about 1.3% or something like that. And alumni of this college are distinguished economists, CEOs, scientists, mathematicians, historians, bureaucrats, etc., etc. Now, my question is, with this education pedigree, I assume you could have easily landed a safe, well-paying job in a plush office with a big company in India, right? What on earth convinced you to turn away from all that and focus on the very different career of mountaineering?
I think I was a bit lucky to get into, that bigger college, So I was good in academics. I could score marks. There was an interview. The interview went off well, and, I got in. So that's how it is, So I wasn't maybe, really cut out to become, one of those distinguished, personalities. However, when I was, to answer your question, I was actually, when I was getting out of college, I wasn't really looking for a, very safe safe, well-paying career. So at that time, I think I was really questioning myself and wanted to figure out what I should be doing. So I think in college I used to do rock climbing. That's in college we were supposed to join a couple of there were clubs and societies, and we were asked to, every student getting admission there was asked to choose two of those. And I chose hiking club as one of the clubs and societies, and I started rock climbing with students from the college. I was having grown up in the hills, I think naturally quite good at it. I would and then we used to go for treks. I found again that I was better than most people when we were out trekking. I was also enjoying it quite a lot. So for those 3 years when I was in college, that was my hobby, and which I enjoyed a lot. It also, I think, uh, gave me a sort of an identity, I guess, in those days. So when I was passing out of college, everyone those days, was doing an MBA. People, CAT used to be the popular, that examination for which people would appear. I also appeared for that exam, but yeah, I had never, prepared for it. I was just trying to buy more time because my parents kept asking me, what next, what next. So, so I guess when I was, when I really had to decide, I was quite confused, and I see a lot of people, youngsters. I think it's quite not natural to think a lot as to what you want to do, and you have so many choices. Those days there weren't so many choices, but yeah, uh, and I really questioned myself deep within, and I was quite sure that I don't want to do a desk job. My calling was for being in the outdoors, was the real calling. So I was lucky to meet an environmentalist that time, Dr. Sridhar, who runs an NGO in Dehradun, and I thought I'll work with him. I wanted to do some environmental science, and I thought maybe that will give me the chance to be out in the outdoors. Uh, but yeah, those days then the NGO wasn't getting enough funding, and there weren't enough projects, and again I was kind of restricted, to more like textbook sort of a learning, not really hands-on, which I had come for. So, but I was still there, and then I met a photographer, Tribhuvan Chauhan. He was a well-known photographer, in those days of film cameras, very popular in Uttarakhand. A lot of big posters, for run by, for the government tourism office, were his photographs. So it was his passion. He would go out into the, the wild and do this landscape photography. And he was showing me some prints from one of his latest trip, out in the mountains. And, and I was really, when I looked at those pictures and I said, yeah, this is, I was really craving for all that. And then, I asked, he was trying to set up a trekking business in those days to actually sustain his passion of, photography. And when he told me this, I just said that, can I join you? And he said, yeah, why not? And I just jumped in. So that was just a call, I think, just out of the heart at that time. And I didn't think too much about it. I just jumped in, and that's how it happened.
So Abhilash, I noticed that you didn't immediately start your business after graduation because you worked for about 8 years with another company, Equator Adventures, right, as a mountain and river guide. And before that, you were a freelance outdoor instructor and mountain guide. So many of my listeners are employees in the finance sector who wish to become entrepreneurs. So I have a few questions here. The first question is, what are the 3 triggers that made you switch to entrepreneurship from being an employee?
So I think I wasn't really ever. I still am not really cut out to be, a businessman. And I think if I look back, uh, uh, I mean, there wasn't one trigger as such. Normally, people say that there is, something happens that a switch gets pressed and something happens. It wasn't like that. Since my early days of working, wherever I worked, uh, I was always, involved in the business a lot. When I worked with Aquaterra, there also I was overseeing the trekking part of the business, uh, and I was very much part of the, you could say, the top management team, which runs and executes, the business. Uh, uh, However, I was never ever I thought that I would actually start a business on my own. It was only after working for many years, uh, when I was there, that when the business was expanding, it started expanding in all sorts of directions. And you being one of the senior staff, you were also kind of getting stretched everywhere, and there were some management issues as the business was growing, which is naturally happens everywhere. And we were trying to resolve some management issues which we could not, and then uh, finally, I think the most logical decision for me at that stage was to move out of the business, and try and do something through which I could pursue my own passion about mountaineering and fulfill those dreams.
Right. So I left my corporate life as you did as well, and then started my own training business, right, which I co-founded and led. But I found that my corporate life equipped me in many ways for the life of entrepreneurship. So, what are the top three benefits in terms of skills or assets like network or wealth uh, that you picked up as an employee that later helped you to start and run White Magic Adventures successfully?
So I think my stint at Aquaterra wasn't really a sort of a corporate stint. We did do all sorts of things. So I was primarily a guide, uh, and when you look at a job of a guide, you are supposed to be out in the mountains, out in the rivers. Uh, the reality is that it doesn't happen all the time. There are periods when you are not doing this activity, and what do you do then? Most guides, I have noticed, are quite shy. They don't want to do. They're very comfortable in their own zone about guiding, which is great. But for me, whenever I didn't have enough work in the field, I would be in the office. I would see what's going on, and then try and contribute to the business in whatever capacity I could. Right since my early days, I would be involved, want to be involved with things. And I guess that kind of attitude helped me in a long run, because I could learn a lot beyond guiding. So you have to. I was involved in operations. I was involved in logistics. I was involved in pretty much everything, and you learn a lot. You if there's something which you don't know, you ask people. Uh, if that curiosity is there, people would answer and you would know. Simple things like taxation and finance is a very complicated thing for a lot of people. It was for me as well. I never understood, and I always used to say, "Oh, all this is rubbish. I don't need to really know about all this. It's not my thing." Uh, but when you started, you had to understand, what is VAT in those days, or what is a sales tax? Why are we being charged a service tax instead of a VAT, or instead of something else? So things like those, those questions kept coming up, and you would then seek answers. You would get answers. So I was fortunate that wherever I worked, the environment was good for learning. Whenever I would question, no one would not answer me. People would explain me things in depth, and I picked up things. In a long run, I guess that all those things put together really helped me when I had to start a business of my own.
The last time we had a chat, you said something, you touched upon something else which you liked and which you probably picked up, which is about key relationships with people. Can you expand on that?
So key relationships with people, yes. So when you start working, ours is a very people's business. We interact with a lot of people, all kinds of people, and slowly you develop a reputation of your own. Uh, be it the fellow guides, be it clients, be it your vendors, transporters. Uh, I feel that this job of mountain guiding uh, is a bit uh, like a job of a doctor. Like you have to understand your patient very well. So when we look at clients, we have to understand what they're capable of, what their expectations are, what their weaknesses are. And then when we go out in the mountain, it's great, that relationship. So a lot of people you would know like to if they go out in the adventure, they want to go with same set of guides again once they are comfortable for. So those kind of relationships keep building. When you start working, you work with people. I've had the uh, I've been, lucky to know to meet a lot of people who are now great friends on trips, and it keeps growing all the time. Whenever you go out, you meet new people, go for a new experience, you do something together, you come back, and it's that you come back with a new relationship, and some of those relationships last really long. So, have I answered your question?
I think so, more than adequately. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So let's talk about something very controversial and very exotic in a way, which is risk management in mountaineering, right? So I Googled you, and I saw that you were a speaker at the Meet on Risk Management organized in March 2020 by the Indian Mountaineering Federation, IMF, not to be confused with the International Monetary Fund, right? IMF. Your topic was choosing participants for a commercial trip. What are the top reasons, apart from uncontrollable objective risks like avalanche and deep snow and bad weather, why some people don't make it to the summit?
So it's a tough question. Of course, if we're looking at just things which are outside, which are inside your control. A lot can go wrong which is not in your control, like weather and objective dangers. But if you look at subjective things and why people don't really make it, I think one big reason is that some people come unprepared, so they don't really know what they are getting into. Sometimes by fluke you can kind of still manage it if everything turned out well, the weather was good, the conditions were not really tough, and you did it once. uh, it's important to be very well prepared. Preparation is the key. So I guess that is one big differentiator amongst people who make it to the top and people who don't. The other thing is that some people naturally, I feel, are a bit risk averse. Wherever things get risky, uh, uh, they like to kind of get away from it. So whereas some people, it is a more of an attitude thing. Some people actually enjoy situations like these, when it's risky and things are not really going as per plan, what to do, you can make out. So I think some people, it's a natural thing. If it's not in you, it's not in you. So that also happens, I feel, sometimes. Also, I think sometimes it is about the way you approach the mountain, the objective. And a lot of times these days, I notice that there is a big ego about climbing these big mountains. That you would have heard a lot of people, they say, I conquered so and so mountain. So you always conquer yourself, you never conquer a mountain. So so when the ego with you, when you come very physically prepared, you feel you are really strong, you go head up to the mountain thinking that, yeah, I'm strong and I can really like conquer this mountain. that ego also, sometimes what happens is, it's not mountains are huge, these Himalayan mountains are, it's not easy to fight them. And sometimes if you go with that kind of an attitude, you tire yourself out before the real summit, because every day you're thinking that the harder you work, the better the result would be. uh, so I guess that also happens sometimes. So I think it has to be, the approach has to be slightly different if you go out there to enjoy whatever the mountains, whatever the conditions offer you, and if there isn't that ego, you enjoy your climb much better. You're also in a much nicer rhythm about the whole climbing, and that sometimes is missing.
I
And
mean,
sometimes issues related to the operators, to the guides, and all of that, which again you don't have any control on.
that neatly segues to my next question, because I recall you repeatedly telling me over the past few months, right, that preparing for a mountaineering expedition is 40% physical and 60% mental. Although for some strange reason, my mind is the other way around, with more emphasis on physical and less emphasis on mental. What exactly do you mean when you say it's 60% mental? And what are the specific traits or skills that you would like to see, or you're looking for to assess mental strength in a client?
So when I say mental strength, so these days what is quite common to notice is that when people come for these climbs, or people are doing these kind of sport, they train a lot. So you have people doing marathons, running, they're doing mountain biking, a lot of physical activities, which is great, to have that consciousness about being physically fit, being physically tough. Uh, but a lot of those people, when I see them in the mountains, it's not, it doesn't, that kind of fitness doesn't necessarily translate into how well you can climb on a mountain, for multiple reasons. It is a different sport, so you need to play it with a different set of rules, if I can say that. Marathon is a sport in itself. A mountaineer can never be good at marathon, so he'll have to train like a marathoner to become a marathoner. Similarly, if you've been running a lot, if you've been doing a lot of mountain biking, doesn't necessarily mean that you will be a good mountaineer. So a lot of times these people approach the mountain with the thing that, okay, I've done a lot of physical training and now I'll crack it. And when they're not able to crack it, it dissipates, and then it becomes mentally very hard. It's a big agony that, oh, I have done so much physically, I've prepared so much for this, and I can't do it. So that's when your mental makeup comes in. So I say people have to be mentally strong. It is a very I mean, it's hard to, first of all, hard to for us to assess who's mentally strong and who's not. And you can only figure it out when you go out climbing with people. That's when you know when this person can break down. But when I'm saying about mental fitness, it's about people who are, when put into really tough situations, they are still the same. Their personality is still the same. The personality doesn't change, and that is more of, again, it's more of your character. It's more of about your attitude towards things. So that's very important, that when you, as a mountaineer, you'll end up getting into really tough situations. It's something when it's really cold, the weather is bad, you are wet inside. You're completely out in the wild with no comfort at all. so at that time, it's more of your mind thing which comes into the picture, where you say, no, I'll keep going, I'll keep going, rather than some people who say, no, I just cannot do this, is too tough for me.
So yeah, listening to the answer to this question as well as what you said previously and the conversations we've had, Avilash, over the last months and years. So it seems to my mind there are 3 or 4 things, right? One is like people who are not faced by simple things, right? In terms of bad weather, illness, lack of good food, comforts of normal life, or performance of other people in the group that can drag them behind. Second would probably be people who are comfortable in their own self, like you said, not burdened with a huge ego and not trying to prove something, but people who probably just come to enjoy the wildlife and the journey. Third would, like you said, would be people who are patient and calm and relaxed, even in really tough situations.
Yeah.
And of course, very importantly, would be in terms of people who don't give up easily, don't turn back at the slightest sign of problems, and they'll always find the energy to take that next step rather than say, I give up and I had enough. So how do you assess this? I mean, physical fitness is easier to assess, right? You can ask someone how long it takes him or her to run 5 kilometers or climb X number of flights of stairs. But mental fitness is quite different. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, how do you assess mental fitness for mountaineering?
So it's hard to assess mental fitness if you haven't climbed together. And most of our customers, because they're repeat, we anyways know what they are capable of, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and that's how we suggest the clients to them. But in case of first timers wanting to do these big climbs with us, I think it's very important that we speak to them. Once you speak to them, it gives us a fair idea about what this person's ideas are, in some sense. So we like to explain what's going to happen on the trip. We like to give as much information as we can about the route, about the conditions we can face, and then expect them to be asking us questions about the climb. And that's when we realize if this person is really serious or not, or if he has that experience or not. We also like to know the experience of the person. What all has he climbed? When did he climb it? Who did he climb it with? How far did he reach? And answers to all that, and would give us some sense about this person's capabilities. Yeah. So that's how you can understand.
So that's about assessing mental fitness. But my next question was, how does one build mental fitness for mountaineering?
So when we talk about mental fitness, again, there is a sort of a preparation which is required. Preparation is the key. There is physical preparation, and then there is mental preparation. You have to visualize the whole climb, what you are going to do, and then have a strategy as to how you're going to approach, the tough sections. You should have try and understand what all can go wrong. If this goes wrong, if the weather goes wrong, are you prepared for it or not? Things like that. Also try and gain as much of experience and skill as you can, even in that setting. Wherever you are, you can these days climb in indoor walls. Skill is important. Experience, if not on big mountains, you can't go often on big mountains, but yeah, do some sort of similar activity, trekking out in the outdoors, where it can be hot, where it can rain, where it can get cold, things like that. We do the real stuff. Also, whenever, if you can get a chance, whenever you're out, if you are out of your comfort zone, don't escape such a situation. Get into it. It's don't shy away from things like that. Whenever things are hard, you have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think something else that's probably useful also is to try and, like you mentioned once, try and visualize the climb and have a strategy.
Yeah. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As in, imagine conditions to be really tough, for bad weather, tough snow, ice conditions, and
yes, yeah.
and expect it to happen, and have a strategy on how to overcome it, I suppose, also helps.
Yes.
Now, of course, so sticking to this very strange and interesting sport of mountaineering, it's a high risk activity, right? And you're only human, and surely the thought of death or serious injury must have crossed your mind on a few occasions before or during a climb. You're not an old man. I hesitate to ask you your age, but and you have many more productive years to live. Years that can be abruptly cut short by a disaster, like has happened to many veteran mountaineers, as you and I know. Now, this fear can be paralyzing or can make you commit stupid mistakes. You have climbed many mountains. How have you dealt with that fear?
So, I share a deep love for mountains. There's a lot of love and respect I have for the mountains, and I have this very strong conviction that I am not going to die in the mountains. It is a sort of a mutual thing. I care a lot for the mountains. I love them. I know mountains are not going to do anything wrong to me. So I don't go to the mountains thinking that okay, thought never crosses in my mind. In fact, I feel that when I'm out driving in the roads, crossing a street, that is more dangerous than being out in the mountains. Uh, so that's never a thought. But yes, you do get into situations which are tough, and you get scared. There is fear. And what do you do then? So with time, you learn to understand your fears better. It's it fear is there is nothing wrong to to have some fear. It's actually a good thing, because when you get scared, you all your senses are aligned. You are actually focusing a lot on what you're doing. You're completely engrossed in what you're doing, and that's what adventure is all about. You want to get into situations where you can be completely into the thing and not be worried about anything else, and these activities give you that chance to be able to do that. So but yes, the fear is there. What you're doing, you can fall, you can slip, you can break a bone. It's You got to understand the fear, and then you got to manage your fear. You have to understand where you go overboard, if you can manage it or not. If it's getting really tough, you can stop. Yeah, I mean.
Hmm. So talking about tough, this is a question I think I asked before, and you neatly dodged that on many occasions. But I had to ask, given your extensive track record and the fearsome summits, at least in my mind, that you have got to the top of, what is your toughest successful climb to date, and more importantly, why was it so difficult?
So, I don't like to look at like a climb as like a toughest climb or the best climb and things like that. There are tough moments on trips. There are beautiful moments on a trip, and all of it can happen in a same trip. But still, I think to answer your question, one of the toughest climbs, I guess, on Satopant a few years ago, I think it was 2018. Uh, so there was a big snowstorm, and we lost a lot of time on the mountain. There were three teams trying to climb the mountain at the same time, around the same time. There was us, there was an army team, and then there was a Swiss team. And we got a bad snowstorm. There were a lot of ropes and all, everything. The route was set till about the summit camp, and all those ropes, all the equipment got buried under the snow. Uh, and and we Each team was trying to figure out what to do. There wasn't really enough time left on the climb to be able to do it. And because initially when the weather cleared, there were avalanche conditions. We lost time, not being able to move when and eventually, we discussed with the Swiss team, with the army team, and we thought the only way it is possible to climb the mountain would be if we combine forces, if all the groups kind of work together, uh, and then try and climb the mountain. And so all the Sherpas, all the support staff, we all came together and we set up the route on the mountain again in deep snow. It was a lot of hard work for everyone. Uh, Also, towards the end, the weather started turning bad again. It started getting very cold and windy. And I remember that summit night was a really cold night, very windy, very hard for everyone. Uh, and you have to take a lot of decisions, on situations like this. What time do you leave? How the weather is going to behave. Uh, at that time, we decided against leaving early. We felt that we should leave late, a little later, so that we are not really uh, exposed to the cold for a long period of time. So most groups were leaving around 11 uh, midnight. I think we left at around 3 a.m. And that was a good strategy because we were cold, but we could somehow kind of bear that cold till the sun started coming out. Whereas the other teams were actually quite cold, exposed to that cold for a long period. And when the sun was out, the situation did get better, and we finally made it to the summit. Each one of us did, and by then we had lost so much of time that the plan was that if we make it to the summit, we got to come back immediately. I think the plan was to come back to summit camp the next day, come all the way back down to base camp, and in one day all the way back from base camp to Gangotri. So it was, we were like really stretched it as much as we could. uh, uh, and I think it was that last opportunity for us. We kept waiting till that last opportunity. We climbed the mountain and then rushed back from the mountain. So uh, 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 I guess it was great in the sense that we kept waiting, we could have easily also said, as a leader I could have said that, okay boss, it's looking very tough, we can't do it, because it wasn't really seeming that anyone could do it. But I think that kind of patience helped us. It was really tough, but I remember it was so cold that I got a frostbite on my cheek. Till
Mhm.
then I thought the frostbites are only on, toes and fingers and nose. But it
Mm.
was so windy. I had a scar here for a few weeks. So that is, yeah, one memory of a tough climb. Then, as I said, there are tough moments. I had uh, early on in my career. I used to work as a rock climbing instructor, and I had this. There was this incident where we were supposed to set up the ropes on this one rock face where we were doing this activity for kids who come for summer camps. And on the way to this rock face, we were going through a pine forest. In the summers, you have these pine needles, which are and it's slippery to walk in the pine forest. I don't know what happened, but this fellow instructor, this who was with me, Raj, he had a slip, and he actually fell off the slope, fell off the mountain, and it was overhanging. And when I just heard him, and I was on the top of the rock face. He was approaching the rock face. I heard him, and when I saw he was coming down, I could see where he's going to go because it was all overhanging rock. And he that I that scene of when he was falling, and it is quite vivid in my memory. I could see the whole body come down. He had some rope also with him, all of it, coming down, and where he landed, I could not see, but I rushed to him, and I found him in really bad shape. He was like completely twisted. Luckily, he wasn't bleeding a lot, but he was all swollen up and in a very bad situation. So I had to rush down, send the message that the activity is cancelled, and we had to call for some more support, some more people from camp. And then we had to bring him back, bring him to the hospital. Then, from one hospital, it was a very remote area. The hospital didn't have any power. There's no X-ray happening. Uh, uh, Things like those. And then you kept moving him from one hospital to the other hospital. I think it took us almost maybe 24 hours or more to bring him down till. First, we got him down to Chandigarh. This was in Himachal, and then from Chandigarh to Delhi eventually. So this was very hard time. You were taking a lot of decisions. I had done my the wilderness first aid training, and I know a few things. But in a situation like this, you have to take a lot of decisions, and you don't know if it's if it is right, if it is wrong. Fortunately, he was bedridden for a long period, but fortunately he could come out of it. He had some fractures on his spine, shoulder dislocation, hip dislocation, but he survived. So very tough moment. Things like this is tough. So.
So let's leave the cold, thin air and unforgiving mountains, and let's get indoors for a moment, because I'm curious about how you run the company, White Magic, right? Because the company seems to have a good reputation as an expedition operator. And I know because I've been, of course, involved in hiking and mountaineering for some years. And I've also seen some online comments. Plus, you've been rated, I think, 4.9 on Google reviews by nearly 100 clients so far, right? Which is a fairly reliable sample size, and most of the reviewers on Google gave 5-star ratings. Now, from the reviews, all of which I enjoyed reading, by the way, your team members, some names which I saw like Sanjeev Rai and Nitesh, Inder, Pawan, Tashi, Shekhar Singh, Nima Sherpa, repeatedly come up for special mention for their excellent attitude and skills, and for, to quote some of the reviewers, going above and beyond. Now, you're the co-founder and the key man at White Magic. Such employee performance, from my experience in corporate and my experience in co-founding and leading my company, must be the result of a unique corporate culture. My question is, what are the elements of the culture at White Magic that attracts and, equally importantly, retains quality talent?
So, as I said, our business is like a people's business. We deal with a lot of people. And when I say people's business, I don't want to limit it to the client side of things. You meet a lot of people, a lot of clients. You also meet and work with a lot of people at the back end, which is your team, which is your vendors, your service providers. And as a business, right, since our early days, we've been very clear that we want to take care of both sets of people. It should not be that you take more care for your clients and less care for your own people. If it does happen sometimes that you start ignoring them, but the moment you start doing that, we as a business, we start getting uncomfortable. So we have to take good care of our team. Now, when I say good care, it is easier. It is easier to say that you take good care. But in terms of, I see that businesses. It's I think one of the downsides of capitalism is that the businesses naturally have to be exploitative in nature to be able to make more profits. And you see people, you see other businesses, how they make money. It's always easy to exploit your own people and make a little more than what is possible. And I see a lot of businesses, they keep doing it all the time. And when that happens, I don't think people who are there working in that kind of environment, they would last for long. In our business, everyone, right from everyone knows it very clearly that we don't exploit anyone. Because when our guides go out, they have to pay the porters. The message is very clear that don't ever cut down on what anyone's due is. Don't cut money, don't give as much as you can, keep them happy. And that everyone understands that very well. So I think that is an important thing, and that really it's we look at our team more as a family. We have to take care of each other. uh, Even during COVID, uh, I'm quite proud to say that our business, we actually were able to uh, take care of each and every individual who works with us, be a full-time employee or an employee on contract. Uh, we looked out for everyone. Uh, in terms of work culture, we are very it's very informal, it's very friendly. uh, we are all everyone's professional, everyone's is his or her own boss. uh, and we are all very equal. uh, uh, and everyone knows it, so it's, and I think it is a lot of it emanates from what we do. When we go out in the field, we each human life is equal. You can't say that this one is superior to the other one. It doesn't work like that. You can yourself be the boss of the company. You can be in a really tough situation. It is someone who is way down the ladder, somewhere low below, who'll come and who'll put his life at risk to be able to help you, to do something for you. So it does not matter who you are. There's no social stigma. There is, you cannot hide your emotions. So it is important for everyone to be what they are. And because all outdoor professionals, we all have this kind of characteristic, if I can say. And it is appreciated, and this is the culture we like to have in the company, that everyone is equal. You do what you can do, you do your best. Yeah, I mean, that's how it is.
Remarkable. Now, many people in corporate life, Avilash, feel stuck and stagnant after, say, 15, 20 years of working. By the time they hit their mid to late 30s, many feel they have stopped learning, and the work isn't as exciting. But of course, they have to pay the bills, right? So they continue to work delivering average performance. I call this the midlife career crisis, and I've seen it so many times on my former students and mentees and clients and colleagues. You have been in mountaineering for close to 25 years, but it appears to me that you've escaped this crisis of stagnation. You're doing quite well. You also seem to enjoy your job. Granted, of course, that you own the business, so the rewards are slightly different. But a quarter century in the same field is quite a long time. What are the key reasons for your longevity and satisfaction?
So A is my love and passion for what I do. So that helps. When things are hard, if you like something a lot, you actually helps you get out of tough situation. It's good. So that is, I think that has helped me sustain this. That's the most important aspect, I think. Other than that, I've got a lot of support from my wife. So that also, I think, is important. And so she's also, she's from the corporate sector. She had a good job. And very early on in our relationship, I discussed about my career and her career. And I think it was very clear to both of us that if at all someone has to change a career, it will be her. I could not look for an alternate career. I'll be miserable at any other job. But she kind of understood all that. She accepted it, and she did make sacrifices at her end whenever it was required, which is really commendable. You have to have that support to be able to do enough for your own career. So I had that support, a complete unconditional support from my wife all throughout. uh, Other than that, I think I was also a bit lucky in terms of the timing. When I say timing, about understanding about of the this whole adventure travel space was growing when I got into this. It was those days very few people would do all this, and uh, it really boomed in the last, I would say, 10 to 20 years. And which meant I had a lot of opportunities. I could do this, I could do rock climbing, I could do river rafting, I could do mountaineering, and still earn a decent living for myself, you know. So now I feel that this space is also getting saturated. So I see a lot of boys who, set up businesses now, and it's not so easy to survive in the current environment because there is, it's quite saturated. There's cutthroat competition. So in that sense, I think I was lucky.
Right. So, what are the things you love about your job, Avilash, as co-founder of White Magic, and of course as mountaineering expedition leader, and of course because every job has its pros and cons, right? It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. What are the three activities related to your job that you would rather do without?
So as a co-founder, I think it's I mean, it's a great job. It's a great thing to be the founder of the business, co-founder of the business. You can call all the shots and do whatever. I guess the good thing is that you have a you I mean you are, it's your job to shape the future of the business, and you have to constantly do that. I think that is a nice thing, and then you have a lot of say in how you want to shape that future. You have these discussions, and you are constantly doing that. That's a good part. Also, it is. It's a very dynamic sort of a thing where you wake up every morning and you have like, okay, there's this problem, and then there's this problem, and then you keep solving those problems, and you don't even realize how that whole day is gone. So it is, I mean, if you have a set job to do, it is, I would find that boring. I kind of like it when it is, you are constantly on your toes. So that's nice. Then yes, you have to keep your team motivated. You have to you have to lead by example in tough situations, which I feel is important. So these are all good things as a co-founder. As a mountaineer, yes, there are a lot of good things. That's actually the better part of my job. To be mountain guiding. It's the most exciting part of my job. I love to work with people, and when I say people, it's all kinds of people. It's our clients, it's people at the back end, it's the porters, it's the cooks, it's the support team. It's you meet a lot of interesting people. It is the drivers, and you get to an opportunity to travel in such remote areas and experience such not only the natural beauty of the places, but also the kind of people who live there. It is, and then interact with them, understand how they look at things. At the same time, the clients, you have people who come from like such far away corners of the world, and which I would have never. I mean, some names you don't know where where these people come from. They talk about their places. It seems that you get an chance to actually travel that part of the world when you listen to their stories. So that I love. I really like. And then as a job, as a job of a guide, it becomes your job to make that bridge between two ends of the spectrum. The people who are the clients and the people who are at the back end, and you are the mediator. You have to ensure that everyone is having a good time, everyone is enjoying. So that is great. So other than that, I think your question was about
what you would rather do without.
Okay. So yeah, as a co-founder, it is. I think maybe what I said was the good part. Sometimes also becomes not so good part is that it is just constant. It never stops. This problem solving. It's always there, and sometimes you need a break. You want to like switch off, but it's hard to switch off, because you are expected to be on top of everything all the time. Other than that, I think it's more or less it's okay. As a mountain guide, I think the tough part is that you, especially now, since I have a son who's growing, you uh, when you go out on expeditions, you also, we have busy season, so we keep traveling a lot during the season, so that you miss out on some family time sometimes. And I understand it's part of our job, and a lot of other jobs also people stay far away from their families. Here it is, we are completely disconnected. We don't know what's going on, if at all. They need help. We are just not accessible. Things like these. So that is like a very delicate balance. The work and the family life balance. As I said earlier, I've been lucky to have a very supportive wife who understands what the nature of my job, and she doesn't expect a lot in at times like this, when in family situations, if I'm required, she takes care of things.
So, Avilash, you and White Magic have come a long way, right, in the past few years. So, the natural next question is, what is next for White Magic, and what are your personal goals here?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of planning which keeps happening for the future. I think we need some focus there. There is definitely, there is the drive for us always has been that you do stuff which is authentic, which is bold, that kind of adventure, and not just the touristy kind of adventure. So we are anyway. COVID was a big disruption. It kind of disrupted our ideas at that time, and now I think in future you'll see quite a few new trips coming. Trips which are really far away from the madding crowds, if you could say. So things like those, we want to do more of exploratory stuff. Other than that, we are also doing some sort of experiments with the whole business structure. Somehow trying to shift more towards an employee-owned kind of a business model. So let's see how far we get with that. As far as my personal goals are concerned, I don't really have any major personal goals. I think what's important for me now is to, I mean, I live in Dehradun. Our son goes to a school here in Dehradun, and maybe later on I would probably like to move a little higher in the hills. I would personally like to do some explorations for myself, travel.
Interesting. I like the part about you exploring other adventures which are bold and authentic and not just touristy. It's always nice to get off the beaten track and be where few people have been before. Something unique, tough, yet exciting. So looking forward to getting updates from you on those lines. Of course, we have now come regretfully to the end of this very fascinating discussion. What are your 3 mantras for success in life?
So, I mean, that's a very tough question. Everyone has their own definition about success, and its success, I think, is a very relative thing. You have to find your own success, have your own definition for success, and then find it. I think what I would rather say is that some learnings from my whatever little I've done, I can as you requested, so so I like to relate, when you are climbing, there's a lot of thinking which keeps going on, so, and whenever I'm out in the mountains, I try and get into this sort of a meditative zone, which I really enjoy a lot. And at that time you I mean, there are all kinds of, there is a lot of philosophy in the mountains, which is why I think in early days the sages would, the rishis, sadhus would go head up to the Himalayas because knew that's where the wisdom is. And when when we are lucky to get to travel to these mountains as as a job, we get to do that, and so. It becomes a little philosophical. A lot of things get into your head, and then you kind of correlate it to your actual life. And I like to take those learnings from the mountains and then kind of apply them to my normal life. It's hard. It's easy to say that, yeah, but it's somehow it has helped me a lot. So one is that a lot of times I see that people are complaining about things they don't have. And it is we all in the mountains when we are climbing up. I see clients who keep asking how far they are looking up and they are not getting there, and they're always getting bogged down by this thing of getting to the top. And at that time we tell them, just look down, see how far you've come. And if they ever look down, then that's when they get surprised. You feel happy about how far you have come. So in our day-to-day lives also, I think it's good to look back and see how far you have come. I think most people are doing way better than what they used to be, and we have to find satisfaction there. Is one takeaway. Then I think it's really important to have some sort of a rhythm about things. In mountaineering, I know it helps a lot. If you're in a rhythm, you enjoy your climb. It's not so strenuous. You don't get as exhausted. The whole experience is much nicer. Similarly, in life also, sometimes it's hard for me also. It's, again, as I said, easier said than done. And one of my, like you said, what's your personal goal? You are trying to find a rhythm. It's important to find a rhythm to your life. What you're doing, your own identity. Sometimes we are trying to do too many things. So it's better to do less, but do something which is in rhythm, which you can enjoy. Yeah, so that's about it.
So if I was to summarize, don't look up and get nervous. Instead, look down and be grateful and happy at how far you've come.
Yes.
Second would be, focus on the next step, forget everything else. And thirdly, lastly but not the least, would be try and find your own rhythm and enjoy it. So thank you, Avilash, for this wonderful interview. I know it's been a struggle trying to pin you down and to get the right times over the last couple of months. Because you have multiple responsibilities: expedition leader, business owner, family man. You're away in the mountains, trekking and mountaineering. So, but finally, I'm delighted that I was able to, piece together this insightful and powerful interview. Because it's the first time I'm interviewing a mountaineer or a sportsman, in other words, and the unique perspectives that someone like that brings to life, career, wellness, mental and physical wellness is quite interesting, which we've already talked about during this podcast. So thank you for making the time and going through the questions and iterating the script many times. And I look forward to seeing you on the trail in the next few months.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vinod. Thank you. Pleasure.
Podcast is brought to you by The Real Finance Mentor. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope you found it insightful and inspirational. If you did enjoy this episode, please drop us a review and spread the word. And be sure to check out more exclusive content on therealfinancementor.com and my LinkedIn profile, which is Binod Shankar CFA. Let's keep in touch. Just add your name to the mailing list on therealfinancementor.com and we'll tell you about new episodes, plus book reviews, upcoming events, and blogs. Till the next time, onwards and upwards.